Thanks, Andy. Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Nithsdale Area Committee on the 9th of March 2022. I should let you know at this point that the Area Committee meeting will be recorded on Teams and that this recording will be available online shortly after the end of the meeting. Can remind members to follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off their video when you're not addressing the meeting. Should you wish to contribute to any item, you should write speak in the Teams chat function and you'll be invited to speak in order about new issues. Should your question or issue be raised by a previous speaker, please withdraw your request so that we deal with the business as efficiently as possible. Usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by a roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting for any reason, can I remind you to either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time, or you could write leave in the Teams chat function and then join. This will allow us to monitor members' presence. Sediment, apologies, and Chair's approval for members' remote participation. Can I ask Tracy, our clerk, for the sediment, apologies, and which members are in the room and those linking by Microsoft Teams, please? And I confirm my agreement to remote participation of other members. Tracy.
Morning, thanks Chair. Morning members. We've got 13 members present in total. We've got 9 present through Microsoft Teams and 4 present in person at Council Chambers, being Councillor Bell, Councillor Nicholson, Councillor Stitt and Councillor Martin. I've got 2 apologies from Councillor Hislop and Councillor McKee, and 3 members not present at the start, being Councillor Charteris, Councillor Ronnie and Councillor Wood. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tracy. Declarations of interest, members. Do any members have any declarations of interest?
Chair, maybe governance advice on this is probably in item 5, page 43. College Mains Phase 2 is still in ownership of my mother, Mrs. Sheila Bell, and it says Lorban here. I just wonder if declaring an interest in this, obviously, that's in page 43, so I'll step outside for if they're discussing that report.
Thanks very much, Graham. Any other declarations of interest? I have one, and it's a very casual declaration. I'm chairman of the Anchor Enterprise Company, and we have an asset transfer request lodged with the council. So clearly the Nith Valley Leaf Trust and agenda item 14 have a similar process ongoing. I have no involvement with them whatsoever. It's simply an indication that I am a member of a similar body. Thank you. If there are no other declarations of interest, we're going to agenda item number 3, the minute of the previous meeting, 10th November, which has been passed full council. So this is for noting. Members happy to note agenda item number 3? No. Thanks, members. Thank you. Move on to agenda item number 4, Scottish Fire and Rescue Services, Nithsdale. 6-month performance update, 1st of April 2021 to 30th September 2021. Report by Head of Governance and Assurance. Our first report is from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Performance Management Report for Nithsdale. I'm pleased to see much of the information in this report disaggregated to Nithsdale level. Overall, this is a detailed report. I have a few questions. Deliberate fire setting seems to be much higher in North West Dumfries than any other ward, and I wondered what you're doing to tackle this. I'm also interested in how your support is going currently with new fire alarms in people's homes. Andrew Wilson, Nithsdale Station Commander, is on Teams to answer any members' questions or address any members' comments. So bearing in mind I have a couple of just casual questions, I'll open up to members first and then I'll follow up with Andrew on the 2 questions I had set. So Andrew, if you're with us, do you have anything to add to your report? And if no, are you happy to take questions?
Good morning, committee. No, I'm actually nothing further to add to the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, I believe the leader had one question. Elaine, are you with us?
Yes, actually you were correct. Some of the information is that it's 148 interlinked alarms. I just had an interest in how that's going in terms of, obviously there's quite a lot of concern that people were unaware of the legislation and might not be getting the alarms fitted, and indeed might then have their home insurance might not actually be valid if they didn't have the alarms fitted. And I just wondered if you were able to give us any sort of update on how that's going, what sort of take up in terms of getting people compliant with the legislation?
Thanks, Leader.
Good morning. Yes, as a service, we are obviously still working, trying our best to attend any very high and high-risk premises who are flagged up to us through our home fire safety visits or any of our partner referrals. Working very well towards that in terms of the equipment that we are fitting. In terms of the legislation, it's actually a difficult one for the fire service because it's non-enforceable from our aspect because it's domestic. So in terms of legislative, we don't really have anything that we can add to it other than giving advice to members of the public. It is obviously a Scottish Government initiative that we are trying to support as best as we can. But yeah, we are as a service locally and nationally, we are trying our best to make sure all those high and very high risk premises are covered by the appropriate detection.
Thanks, Andrew. There was a question I had about, and I'm sure not in North West Dumfries members will be interested. There's quite a significant number of deliberate fire settings in North West Dumfries. Are you addressing that and how?
Absolutely. I know through COVID it's been difficult because we haven't actually been able to attend as many. Obviously, the schools were off, so a lot of the in-house visits were put on hold. There was a spate of grass fires which they added to the figures, which didn't really help. But we are still, through the community safety engagement team, we are still engaging with members of the public, the groups who maybe is the main cause of these types of fires. But we have continually engaged with these groups, and it's also something that going out of COVID, with the recovery phase, we're able to identify and engage with a lot more of these groups as well. So it is something that we're sighted on, but unfortunately, I think it was probably more to do with the fact that things like the schools were off. There was a lot more people had a lot more time on their hands, if that, for want of a better way of putting it. But it's definitely something that we had on the radar, and that we have engaged with the groups.
Thanks very much, Andrew. I have 3 members looking to speak to you. I have Councillor Nicholson, Councillor Bell and Councillor Wood. So Roy Nicholson, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one on 3.10, unwanted fire alarm signals. How does the classification be determined which is low risk premises and higher risk? And one of the things I'm thinking about is, are businesses below residential premises, are they high risk? And there's even, in residential estates, you've got Lincluden, for example, they have businesses below residential flats. Are they classed as high risk? How does it work when you make the determination?
Well, basically, Councillor, we have a risk scoring matrix that we apply to every premise that we collate information on, whether it's for potential operational intelligence, as we would call it. And there's, off the top of my head, I think there's probably about 20 different points within that. And a lot of the points will cover what materials may be stored within the premises, a number of life risk, is there a sleeping risk, the vulnerability of the groups inside, for example. And if I took a care home as an example, all the measures that are put in place from a fire safety perspective in a care home, it may actually score the care home as a low risk going by the scoring, but due to the nature of that, we can circumvent that and make that a high risk premises, if you like, due to the nature of the occupants. But generally speaking, it comes in under the risk scoring matrix, and that's how we score from low, medium and high, and sometimes very high.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Can I come back in, Jim?
Sure thing, aye.
Just on that, and are you saying that the matrix you use, does that include risks of calculated with businesses below residential premises, like flats and things?
Yeah, well, yeah, it should. And if we take into account also the construction of these premises as well, the everything put in place. If you have, for example, shops on a ground floor and then residential above it, there should be, well, the whole premises should be adequately constructed with correct fire stopping in between the floors. So again, there should be no issues at all with any of the risk score matrices that we put in place.
Thanks, Ronnie. Graham Bell, then I've got Andrew Wood and Andy Ferguson. Graham Bell, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's on page 33 in the deliberate fire setting. Obviously, North West Dumfries are fairly high and fires by the ward. Obviously, looking at these, the deliberate fires, are some of these actually, obviously, you mentioned grass, which is obviously not this time of year, we're not getting burning grass, but how many of these are derelict buildings? I know we've had an issue at College Mains there last year with a deliberate fire. The fire service had called out, the risk assessment was taking place with yourselves and other partner agency. What concerns me, some of these derelict buildings are I've got there's other derelict buildings in North West Dumfries. We just wonder what measures you're taking, because we could be faced with serious fire and someone be injured in these. That's what concerns me. Taking, for example, for a lot of issues up at the old convent recently, antisocial behaviour, it's been going on since October, breaking into a building, knocking down barriers. So I just wonder what your partner services are dealing with the community officers regarding this, because this could be escalating to quite a serious problem up at the old convent. Just wonder what you can be doing about this.
Hello, Councillor. Yeah, the convent, again, it's something that is it's totally on the radar. It's at the forefront. The community action team, they've visited that location on numerous occasions, constantly in dialogue with the owners of the premises and also the community police. We try, we put in place what we can. Again, the measures that keep getting put in place by either ourselves or the police, they keep being circumvented by the people who are intent on getting in, to the point where I think, me only being last week, I was in dialogue with the community action team who said that the latest they seen, because again they had only been up there that day, the people, I can't say who it is because I don't know, but the people who are intent on causing damage, they're now bringing ladders up to circumvent the ground floor measures and to try and gain access into the first floor or above. So we can only keep trying. Again, the operational crews are well aware of the risks. There is information there on access points, etc. But yes, it's a concern. Not just that. Derelict premises, there are a number of derelict premises that we're aware of, and we can only keep trying to monitor them, make sure the information that we have on them is stored, relevant to any crews that are attending. But in terms of engaging with the partners, it's an ongoing thing. It's not just obviously the partners, but the owners of these premises as well. We do try and keep on top of it. But again, there's only so much you can do, because you can't be a 24/7 presence at these premises.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Graham. Andrew Wood, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's on page 35, unwanted fire alarm signals. There's a massive increase on Nith, and I would have thought that this is a serious distraction from the valuable work that you carry out. What actions are you taking to try and reduce this particular area?
Morning, Councillor. Yeah, UFAS, as we call it, is a huge concern. We're hoping that the consultation that had went in place over the previous year was going to come into force this April, but unfortunately it's been put back a year to April 23. That consultation and the results of it, that would have reduced the UFAS incidents was by over 50%, which would have been welcome to us. In terms of the numbers that we have, again, yeah, it's nationally it's went up, and again, primarily due to COVID restrictions that were put in place. But we continuously engage with premises if they have UFAS. And I know within Dumfries and Galloway, I know we're talking Nithsdale here, but in terms of fire safety, the normal guidance is if a premises has 5 UFAS incidents, we would then engage with them, but we're actually engaging with them earlier than that, normally about 2. We're on the phone to them, we're asking them, look, what's the cause of this? Sometimes it can be a simple maintenance issue, or again, depending on the time of the year, they may just turn the heating back on and you get dust and things like that, and it does interact. But we are actually going over and above the levels as a national service that are required in this area. We're going over and above that. And unfortunately, the numbers have went up, and a lot of it is individual premises. It's not been like there's only been 1 or 2 recurring premises that we've had to deal with. So it's difficult if a premise only has 1 UFAS incident to try and quantify that and to put them, to have a dialogue with them. But obviously going forward, we do look to reduce that figure. And obviously this time next year, the consultation that has taken place will be put into practice, and the figures will reduce greatly.
Thanks, Andrew. And Andrew. Hey, Andy Ferguson, please.
So that's Andrew. Okay, got it, Jim. Right. Good morning, Andrew. Nice to see you again. Firstly, I think, Jim, it's only right that I should thank, through Andrew, the team for a really rapid response to a vulnerable constituent I had about a fire alarm, where she was getting into a real state about it. And I know that Andrew's team fixed that for us, so thank you again, Andrew. The question really is kind of been answered, Andrew. It was Andrew Wood came in with it. And I think you'll know what I'm coming away with here is Ronnie touched on it as well, about if you've got a key holder locally, it's easy to sort. Right, if you've got a UFAS. But if you don't, if you've got an absentee landlord who might be in India or Pakistan, as my next door neighbour was, we don't have right to enter, do we? To turn off a fire alarm or to check that it's burning. I think for me, just before you come in, is how can we help? Right? Who can we get in touch with, speak to actually maybe make your job easier? Because I'm looking at all the UFAS charts here. You know, it's varying from up to almost 50%. Well, actually, there are a few of them over 50% of the against false alarms are UFAS. You know, so it's a huge drain on your resources, I would suggest.
Well, in terms of right to enter, we actually do have some rights to enter. If we have reason to believe that there is a fire within a premises, then we can forcibly enter. Unfortunately, like you say, most of the time you can have a recce of the premise, a 360, whatever you want to call it, and we will use everything at our disposal. We'll look through windows, we'll put ladders up, we'll use thermal image cameras to try our best to ascertain if there is a fire within a premises. Most of the time there isn't, and a lot of the time it could be cold, water ingress, a number of things that can cause it, or even just a fault in the system. So under those circumstances, then we won't forcibly enter. Only if we've got reasonable doubt, then we will enter. In terms of key holders, we don't now. We can't hold key holder information. We used to hold it on our when fire control was here. We used to be able to ask them to access key holder information, and we also used to hold it on some of our operational intelligence. But obviously, you've got data protection now. You're not allowed to. So, in terms of key holders, we try to contact the police. So again, it's it can be a time-consuming thing when you get an appliance or 2 appliances going to a premises, just trying to ascertain if there is a fire or not. it's more about education for the actual duty holders themselves. And this is what's going to happen next year. The onus is going to be put back onto the duty holders. It already lies with them, but I think over the years, it's almost became accepted that the fire service deal with this, and they will investigate all fires, where it's actually the onus should be on the duty holder themselves to check where a fire is, location of the fire, report if it's a false alarm, etc. So that's actually where we're heading next year. But as you've kind of quite rightly said, we've still got another year of potentially over 50% of our incidents being unwanted fire alarm signals.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Andrew. There doesn't appear to be any other requests for speaking. So, Andrew, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for responding so positively to the questions. And I find your report really helpful, and it drills down very much into the kind of information that members are looking for. So hopefully that'll continue. So thank you very much for this today, and thanks for your assistance.
Oh, thanks very much.
Members, we are asked to scrutinise the performance report for Nithsdale area from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service period 1st April 2021 to September 2021.
Sorry, Chair.
And detailed in the appendix. And
Chair.
a member... Sorry?
Sorry, we've got the Vice Chair wanting to come in.
Oh, sorry. Tracy?
Thanks, Tracy. Sorry, Jim, it wasn't actually on that report. So I was trying to get it in just after. It was just to ask why we don't have a report from the police, because we normally have it at the same time as the fire and rescue.
All right, okay. Well, listen, can we just... happy to agree that we have scrutinised this report and that's concluded. And then Tracy or Fiona, can you help the Vice Chair on why there isn't a police report? Because she is quite right. We normally get 6 monthly reports from partner agencies, including the police. And if we don't know, can someone find out when the next report is likely to be with us? Oh, I see Vlad here. So, Vlad, can you help Vice Chair, please?
Thanks, Chair and Vice Chair. Unfortunately, I don't have that information unless my colleagues on the call have it. But what I'll do is I'll take that away, and apologies that we hadn't spotted that ourselves. But we'll take that away and then get back to members as to the state of play on that particular report.
Thanks, Vlad. And even if the report is there and somehow it hasn't been before us, it might be helpful if it could be circulated to all Nithsdale area committee members, if it's to hand, albeit post-meeting, because we can't consider it today, but at least give members a flavour of what the police have been doing, what their activities are and what the issues are in Nithsdale and in our respective wards. So if that could be done, that would be great, Vlad, and I'll ask Fiona and Tracy to collectively deal with that for us. And thanks again, Tracy, for bringing that matter to our attention. Okay, members, we move on to agenda item number 5, Economy and Resources 6-month assessment of business plans 2019 to 2023, the performance for the 1st of April 2021 to 30th September 2021. Report by Head of Economy and Resources. Our next performance report is from Economy Development Resources over the 6 months from 1st April to 30th September, and there are a few features that caught my eye. Pleased to see mention of the figures for food distributing during COVID and the provision of some 193,000 meals to the most vulnerable people in our communities. This was a great response, augmented by the efforts of community groups providing food throughout Nithsdale and beyond. It's good to see the update on the Trees Conservation Area Regeneration Scheme, and Simon Fieldhouse is on Teams to answer any questions members have or address any members' comments. So Simon, I see. Hi Simon, good morning. If you're not to add to your report, we'll go to members' questions for you.
Hi, morning, Chair. If I could just make just a minor amendment, Chair. It just reads in 2.1 that obviously successes referenced within paragraphs 3.5. It should read 3.5 to 3.6.5.4, Chair. So my apologies for that miss error.
Thanks, Simon. Okay, member Simon's with us. Any questions for Simon on the report from Head of Economy and Resources? Might be your lucky day, Simon. It would appear not. Members will have read the report, and all of these reports are very constructive and the information is very helpful. We are asked to consider economy and resources area-based successes and developments as detailed in the key successes section of this report. Paragraph 3.5 to paragraph 3.64, is that right, Simon?
3.6.5.4, Chair.
3.6.5.4 in Nithsdale, and consider any aspects of performance to be referred to the relevant future committee. I have Councillor Ferguson, Andy and Tracy. Tracy, I think you were in first. So Tracy and then Andy, please.
No, not me. That's from the last item, Jim.
No wonder you're in front of you, Andy. Thanks, Tracy. Andy, please.
All right, I'm a quick mover, I'm a Jim. Okay.
Absolutely.
Right. Simon, I see it 3.6.5.2, a lot of points in there. We've got new additions to the ship. Is it possible to get an updated full list of the ship round to all members so that we can see what, across the region where everything is?
I certainly, Chair, through yourself, yes, she'll speak to Jamie Little, the housing officer, to ensure that can be provided to members.
Thanks,
Thank you, Simon.
Andy. Thanks for asking for that. That'll be really helpful. I've got Andrew Wood again, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's on page 43. It's with regard to the core path 106 Glenmidge Keir. It talks about improving the surfacing and the drainage. Can you give us a bit more detail on that, please, Simon?
I thank Councillor Wood. I will, if it's okay with the committee, I'll ensure obviously that Brian Scott, who's unable to join us today due to other commitments, is able to provide a bit more of an update in terms of the exact nature of work, and I'll circulate that around all members of the committee.
That'd be really helpful, because my understanding is that it is used for agricultural use, and we don't want to go putting in a good surface when there's going to be tractors and everything going up and down it. That was all. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. And thanks for that response, Simon. So we can expect two bits of information emanating from either you or colleagues.
Yes, Chair.
Are there any other questions or observations for Simon? Well, Simon, still your lucky day.
Thanks, Chair.
So we've considered aspects of performance to be referred to the future committees, and we've asked for a couple of bits of information. If members are content with that, we'll conclude that agenda item 5. Simon, thanks for being with us today. Nice to see you. Hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Simon, and thanks for being with us. Okay, members, move on to agenda item number 6. And I have been asked, although it's quite clear what the report relates to, the headline doesn't say education and learning. It simply says Director's 6-month assessment of business plans. So if we can ensure that the titles are always the same, it just simply looks better on committee reports. So we know it's education and learning. So moving on to the next performance report from education and learning, covering April to September 2021. Overall, it's good to see that the 10 performance measures are all on track or within acceptable limits, although 6 are only reported annually. And of the 15 agreed projects, all are either completed or on track. Members will note that, as per paragraph 3.11.1, national performance data was published at the end of February, and an area level report will be mailed to this committee thereafter. Members, we want to note that the exclusion rate in our area has increased as detailed in paragraph 3.13.3, something that Jim might want to touch on. And Jim Brown is in Teams to answer any members' questions or address members' comments. So if you just bear that in mind, Jim, I'll come back to you on that and see if there are any other questions from other members of the committee. Members of the Committee for Performance on Education and Learning. Just shows you, Jim, if you provide enough information to members, that keeps them off your back, so to speak. it doesn't appear that members have any questions on the education and learning performance assessment. How about the fact that exclusion rate hasn't increased? Is this due to issues related to COVID-19, or is it one of these things that vary at any stage anyway, dependent upon local and national circumstances?
I think both. I mean, the first point is it's difficult, isn't it, to make causal statements around things that are about young people. We've got 20,000+ young people, so things can happen that we don't necessarily, we're not necessarily aware of, that then can produce small spikes. What is relevant, I think, is if we look at the long term, a 10-year pattern, secondary exclusions have roughly halved over 10 years. Primary exclusions are now roughly a third. I'm talking about the full year data from last year. And that's not a graph that sort of goes up and down. That's a fairly consistent pattern of reducing exclusions. Your questions are a very relevant one as well, Jim, Chair, because if we look at national drivers around this in terms of things like the Promise and the Morgan Report and UNCRC, we're getting greater clarity around how we should be using exclusions. There was a document called IEI Part 1 and 2, which gave very clear guidance on the fact that exclusions are a supportive process. They are not a punishment. They're a way that we can get a partnership to help support a young person so that they don't end up doing the same things that cause them to have problems in the first instance. So this is a supportive process, and I think what we've got there over the 10-year period, Chair, is a better understanding of when and how we should be using it. In terms of the spike that is last year, that certainly will be to do with the number of days that we had last year, which of course there were fewer days. This is a rate per 1,000 rather than a rate per openings of schools. So the last 2 or 3 years have had very unusual figures because the openings of schools have been different each year. I would suggest that the impact of longer periods of home learning have been very, very challenging, disproportionately challenging on some young people. And that has possibly meant, but again, we're always talking about the possibly because we don't know the fact around this. There's no way we can understand that causality, but it would be reasonable to suggest that for some young people, prolonged periods away from our schools has not supported them in their approaches to appropriate behaviours. But I can't say that, but it's not unreasonable to speculate on that, I think, Chair. So I would say overall, I am confident about the direction of travel. I am disappointed that we do have to exclude sometimes, but it is a tool that we need to do to get it right for young people who face the most challenging circumstances.
Jim, thanks very much. That was a really helpful and useful response. Councillor Ferguson, Andy.
Thanks very much. Good morning, Jim. Nice to see you again. I tell you what it is. It's about the pupil equity funding. I totally get that it's money dedicated to each head teacher and working with some local partners to spend the money as they see best. But and I wouldn't expect us to see a return from every school about how they're doing it. But I think we're maybe looking for it is a bit of reassurance that the head teachers are sharing that information amongst each other about how they're actually best using the PEF money. Maybe if you've any comment to make on that, it might be helpful.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Councillor Ferguson, you hit the nail on the head. You know, this is a comparatively unusual piece of funding in that it goes directly to schools, and there should be some consultation around how that funding is spent. But there's a huge number of options open to head teachers to impact on young people who are in receipt of free meals. Equally, the last couple of years have been difficult with PEF, and I recognise that when I speak to head teachers because of the time away from the classroom. Certain interventions were not able to be used because young people were not in the building, and so it was more difficult sometimes to spend that funding, and in some cases head teachers were not able to do that because the plans they'd set out at the beginning of the year then prevented the funding to be effectively used in the ways that had been determined. However, your point remains. Do head teachers talk to one another? Yes, they do. We also collect the data. So whilst we can't determine how it's spent, we can require there to be a response on how it's spent and the impact it had. And we collect that every year. And I believe I disaggregated that by area. So you'd have seen within Nithsdale how the money was spent, what impact it had. The challenge, I think, more than that is to say that even if a particular intervention is used in two different schools, context is everything. So if we then think we can measure that using the same scale, that will cause us problems. And bear in mind, it's pupil by pupil. So we're looking at each young person and saying, has that impacted, let's say, on attainment or attendance or referrals? Has that particular intervention had an impact on that particular child? So it's because of the nature of the funding and the nature of how it's spent and where it's impacting, it's very difficult to get aggregated data that gives us the ability to compare two different schools in different areas. But yes, head teachers do communicate with one another about what is working and what doesn't work. And I certainly myself was part of a session where we had a full day where we had different providers, different approaches, and all head teachers came in and did a carousel type experience to understand what the types of characteristic interventions you might want to use are. Equally, there's a very strong piece of work that we use, which is a dashboard, a sort of tiled dashboard, where we can see, in the broadest terms, Councillor, different interventions, how much evidence there is to determine the effect, how strong the effect size is, and how costly generally those interventions are. So head teachers do use relatively sophisticated research-driven evidence to inform those decisions.
Thanks, Andy. Councillor Wood wants to come in, but before that, Jim, can I just clarify one point you made? You said the PEF funding spent within the building. I thought it wasn't restricted, and I thought if the head teacher or the school thought that some spend out with the school would be in the best interest of the pupils, that was part of the flexibility that PEF allowed.
You're absolutely right. I'm sorry, that was my miscommunication. When I used the word building, I suppose I was using it metaphorically to say it is done in that locality. So you're absolutely right. A head teacher could look at a particular child and say, there's an intervention, you know, the gap for that child is this particular thing that prevents them from, I don't know, being on time. So we're going to put an intervention in place that could support that particular thing, and that won't necessarily be within the four walls. So yes, you're absolutely right. Thank you for that clarity, Chair Callity.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Hey, Councillor Wood, please, Andrew.
Thank you, Jim. It's with regard to page 57, 3.17.2, where you're talking about the alternative certification model. Now, clearly that was brought in due to COVID, but with the success that you've had in implementing it, is this a model that could be brought forward in the future? Or do you believe that exams are the only way that we should be assessing our youngsters?
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Am I okay to respond, Chair?
Absolutely, Jim. Yes, aye.
Thank you very much. That's a very interesting question. And obviously there's been a number of years of uncertainty in terms of how we best make those determinations of progress, SQA progress. You might well be aware, Councillor Wood, that the OECD report that was published around Education Scotland articulated that we're making really very, very good progress with a curriculum for excellence. But that what we need to do is to make sure that the terminal assessment vehicle, whatever we call it, actually articulates with the primary and broad general experiences and early learning. You may be aware that there's a commission, the Muir Commission. They are about to publish at any time, and that will hopefully give us a much greater clarity on what we might do moving forward. And you may well as well be aware that, of course, there are lots of models for education systems that use the kind of thing Scotland used in the last 2 years. In other words, the professional judgments of teachers, verifiable, moderated, and able to be checked, but those professional judgments rather than, let's say, that single terminal exam. Now, crystal ball gazing, I think we want to do exactly as you say and make sure we capture the excellent practice that actually we all learned in an extreme situation. Real credit to my colleagues in schools who, you know, from one day to the next a couple of years ago, really had to then say, right, okay, we've been doing everything. It was about this time of year, wasn't it? We've been doing everything with an eye towards May and June terminal exams. Now we're going to have to, if you like, retrofit what we've done so that we can come up ourselves with assessment vehicles. And I think Dumfries and Galloway did an extraordinary job so that our young people did get certificated and were successful in both these last 2 years. I am afraid I can't give you a definitive answer on what that will look like, but what I can say, Councillor Wood, is when we know from government what decisions around SQA moving forward are, we will absolutely be informing yourselves of those decisions. I strongly suspect, as you, I think, are moving towards, that we might be looking at model. How different it'll be is to be determined, but a slightly different model, certainly, I would have guessed.
Chair, through yourself, I actually appreciate what Jim's saying, because from my own point of view and watching my grandchildren, how they've progressed through school, I have been very impressed with the way that you're doing continual assessments on these youngsters rather than just that spot check every so often. And when you look at how universities are taking it forward as well, they are doing continual assessments. And when you consider that youngsters, there are some out there that really get themselves wound up really high when it's exam day, you know, and it takes all the pressure off youngsters if they are continually assessed. So I'd be keen to see a different model being brought forward. I'm not saying this is the correct one, but I'm very pleased to hear that you are looking at how it could, you know, your experiences can be built on.
Thanks, Andy.
And thanks, Jim. It would appear there are no other members looking to speak. So, Jim, thank you very much for being with us today. Thanks for your comprehensive response to the questions members set. And thanks again for your report presented to us. Thanks, Jim. Members, we are asked to review the 6-month summary of performance for the Nithsdale area from 1st April to 30th September 21 is set in paragraphs 3.9 and 3.10, a detailed appendix 1. Consider the area-based achievements and developments as detailed in the key achievements section of this report, paragraph 3.12 to 3.17.2, and consider any aspect of performance to be referred to the relevant future committee. So are members content with the work that's been carried out, the responses that have been given? And I see Andrew Wilson has sent a message to all members in chat, and I'm sure Tracy will circulate that to members just in case the chat function isn't being used by all members of the committee. So are we content with agenda item number 6 and the responses? In that case, move on to agenda item number 7. Community 6-month assessment of business plans 2019 to 2023, the performance 1st of April 2021 to 30th September 2021, report by Director Communities. The next report is Communities Director at 6-month assessment of business plan 2019 to 2023. I'm pleased that this report covers some very specific information disaggregated for Nithsdale. In terms of some of the highlights, it's good to see the activity and feedback from our young people in terms of counselling in schools and young people reporting improvements in confidence, skills and working life. This positive impact on young people's mental health is vital during this period and beyond. Good to see also the support offered to our local businesses during COVID and restart. The account of the work done in visitors' return and the support given to our communities and visitors to feel safe is significant. a great deal of diverse work benefiting communities during a difficult period. And Harry Hay and Jamie Ferguson are in teams to answer any members' questions or address any members' comments. And I know the leader was curious about visitors' returns. So, Harry and Jamie, if you're with us, that'll be great. If you've nothing to add to your report, the leader has a question for you.
Morning, Chair. Morning, members. Yeah, nothing further to add to the report. Thanks very much, Jim.
Thanks very much, Harry, and good to see both you and Jamie with us. Leader?
Yeah, it's page 67 and the paragraph 3.10.16. You describe what happened last year in order to try and encourage visitors to safely return to the region. And I know a lot of work was done by council officers and members of communities to ensure that the sort of support the communities were offered was what they felt they needed. And it differed a bit from community to community, but there was a lot of effort went into to try to encourage people to come back. And I just wondered really in terms of figures, because I've not seen any figures yet, have we any way of assessing how successful last year's campaign was, if you like? 'Cause I think it was a campaign to get people back in to use our tourism businesses. And is there anything that we can learn from that to ensure that there's a successful visitor season this coming year? Because obviously our businesses are still recovering from the effects of COVID. So just, do we have any figures that tell us, compare maybe with pre-COVID, how many people were coming into Nithsdale as visitors and holiday makers, and are there any lessons that we can learn for the coming season?
Thanks, Leader. I see you, Stephen Herriot, as well. So whether it's Harry, Jamie or Stephen that answers, whichever one will be fine. Gentlemen.
If I could maybe come in that, Chair, thanks. Yeah, the paragraph really, we put it in under roads and infrastructure, but it was just really flagging the work that had been carried out by community assets, roads and the waste services within roads and infrastructure on the visitor management in terms of supporting that last year with enhanced kind of public realm works, litter, street cleansing and public conveniences. In terms of the figures, I'm not fully aware of the analysis on that. What I do know is that there is a report coming to Communities Committee on the 22nd of March that very much considers the visitor management, what was achieved last year, and some of the analysis on that. That's in terms of the report itself, I would need to check and just see if the appendices contain that kind of detailed analysis and the kind of the crunching of the numbers.
Thanks, Stephen. And if they do, after it, if it's going to Communities Committee, that's rightly where it should go. But after that, can it be circulated to all Nithsdale area committees on the basis, committee members on the basis that all members are not serving on Communities Committee?
Chair, I will ask for that to happen, yes.
Thank you. Content with that, Leader?
Yes, I'm content with that. Thank you.
Thanks, Leader. Councillor Wood, followed by Councillor Campbell. Andrew, please.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. It's with regards to public conveniences, and I note that we've got 56 conveniences are opened. When are we going to get them all open? Because I also noticed last weekend that Pen Punt is still closed. And as we're getting into spring and cycling will be starting up again, and as you're probably aware, Pen Punt, Keir and Tinrin are now becoming quite noted cycling areas. Is it possible that we can get that opened up?
Harry?
I'll bring Nicola in if that's okay, Chair, and just on the timescale for the seasonal toilets. Thank you.
Hi, Nicola.
Morning, councillors. Just to confirm that our seasonal toilets will be opening at the end of March in time for the Easter weekend and Easter school holidays. That's what normally happens each year.
And that will include Pen Punt, Nicola?
I beg your pardon?
Will that include Pen Punt?
Yes, it should do.
Thank you very much for that, Jim.
Andrew, did you want to come back in?
Yes, Jim, just really to thank you very much for that and for Nicola for her response.
Thank you. I've now got Councillor Campbell and then Jeff Lever. John?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. It's on page 71, 3.15.8. It's about the attendance in the swimming pool. I know it's a historical report up until September last year, but I'm just wondering, has the attendances, started to pick up now that we're beginning to come out of some of the lockdown measures?
Thank you. That'll be Harry, I think. Harry?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Campbell, a very topical question, and if it's okay, I'll maybe just give an answer on the kind of broader picture as well across leisure and sport facilities and indeed activities generally. Yeah, the trajectory is starting to come back up. I think what we've found is that in Dumfries and Galloway, the facilities worked very hard really to build the confidence of the different user groups, either groups, organisations or individuals, and certainly last calendar year, so relevant to this reporting period, some of the usage dropped simply because individuals felt that they weren't quite ready to come back into facilities. Clearly, we always complied with the national guidance in terms of distancing and cleanliness, etc. But what we've found is that confidence is building, and people that perhaps found alternative ways to keep fit and get out and about are now starting to incorporate our leisure and sport facility use into that programme, which is obviously very, very positive. So what we're doing at the moment is keeping an even closer eye on attendances, just to really pick up trends, demographics and emerging patterns, because in actual fact some of the facility usage is actually going up in particular areas more so than pre-pandemic. Other areas are actually going down and being maintained at that level. So it's a bit of a mixed picture at the moment. And I know, speaking to colleagues in other authority areas, it's exactly the same type of profile. So it is something that looks more encouraging. And again, our intention is to bring a more detailed report to Communities Committee that looks at the whole issue across the service. But as things stand, the Nithsdale area is following a very, very similar pattern. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thanks very much, Harry. I see Vlad wanting to come in. Vlad?
Sorry, it's not in that. It was just if I could just be put in line with the other members, if that's okay, and I'll just come in on another point in regards to the report, just for an update.
Yeah, Chair, can I just come in and thank Harry for that response? I'm sure my grandson will be quite happy with that. He wants his papa to take him swimming, so I'll need to get my duckers hunted out and book a couple of sessions at the swimming pool. But thanks anyway. Thanks, Chair.
Grand, thank you.
I've got Jeff Lever, and then Andrew would want to come back in. And then, Vlad, if you want to clarify something in the interim, or do you want to come in at the end? Okay, I'll get you at the end, Vlad.
At the end, that'd be fine. Thanks very much, Chair.
Super, thank you. So we've got Jeff, Andrew, and then if there's no one else, Vlad, and then we'll go to the recommendations. Jeff, please.
Yeah, it's just a general query. I don't know if I'm missing something, but 3.13.4 roads and infrastructure. But like the others, there's no commentary there at all. Should there be?
Stephen? Roads and infrastructure, that Jeff reckons there's no commentary on that particular section of the report.
In that section of the report, Chair, that's the whole service, roads and infrastructure. What there isn't a specific comment on roads performance, which what Councillor Lever is referring to. I think in future probably would be beneficial, is probably now that the Roads Recovery Fund's been up and running this past year, that we could report on the progress on that, and we'll certainly pick that up within the next set of performance reports for report back to the committee. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Stephen. And bearing in mind it's 6 months old anyway, it probably wouldn't be up to date, but it's as close as we'll get it. So fine. Thanks for that. Thanks, Jeff. Andrew Wood again, please.
Thank you, Jim. It's probably one for Harry. It's to do with DG1. I had a constituent from Thornhill who was expressing concern that the management in DG1 up in the gymnasium maybe isn't as it could be. insofar as youngsters congregating on the equipment and the potential elderly or more senior people wanting to use the equipment but unable to because of this. I also noted that there was a similar complaint went into the local press on the same subject. Is this quite a large issue, or is it something that you've now got under control?
It's probably no for the performance reporting, but I'll get Harry to comment on it. It might be that it's something it takes offline with you because it's not part of the performance reporting. But Harry, just can you respond to Councillor Wood?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Councillor Wood, quite happy out with the meeting to give you a shout just to get more details. I am aware that due to the enthusiasm of some of our younger people, they were very keen to come in en masse and use the facility, but clearly our fitness suite supervisors need to make sure that use is done safely. So if there are specific concerns, quite happy to give you a shout, Councillor Wood, and maybe get a bit more detail. And if anything needs to be resolved, certainly happy to do that. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for bringing that up, Andrew, and Harry will deal with you offline. If there are no other questions for members, I will have Vlad come in just before we draw this particular agenda item to conclusion. Vlad, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to clarify that under paragraph 315.4, under improving gypsy traveller sites, it makes a reference to it going to Communities Committee on the 22nd of March as a result of conversations that we've had with us in regards to that. That's not going to that particular committee. We would rather have that particular options appraisal fully robust before we put it in front of members, and that's the reason that we have in effect pulled it from this committee, but we're hopeful to have it for the next committee, which obviously will be new council in due course, but a fully robust options appraisal for members to make a decision on.
Thanks very much, Vlad. So members will note that that Gypsy Travellers report will not be going, and therefore it's amended on. It will be amended on the minute of this this committee meeting when that is produced. Thanks, Vlad. Okay. In that case, we go to recommendations. We're asked to review the 6-month summary performance. We're asked to consider the area-based achievements and developments as detailed in the key achievements section of this report, and consider any aspects of performance to be referred to the relevant future committee. And Nicola, Jamie, Harry and Stephen, thanks for being with us today. Thanks for responding in the way you did. I'm sure that'll satisfy members, and on that basis, members will be happy to accept the recommendations and move on. And thank you all, folks, for being Nicola, Jamie, Harry and Stephen for being with us for this agenda item. Thank you.
Many thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, folks. We move on to agenda item number 8, Dumfries Town Centre Markets report by Community Planning and Engagement Manager. This agenda item has been removed from the report in consultation with the Provost, Vice Chair and myself. We intend, although there is a recommend or a suggestion that it goes to the full council on the 31st of March, the Provost and I have decided that we will have a special meeting to discuss this particular agenda item at a date to be set before the next election on the 5th of May. That's on the basis that this should be a local decision-making process, and I believe that in the previous report there was a decision to be taken by us in March. Therefore, to comply with that, we intend to convene a special meeting. There's no debate on the matter because it's no longer in the agenda. That's a decision taken by the Provost, Vice Chair and myself. So members will receive an invitation to a special meeting to take the Town Centre Market report, and hopefully it'll be a one agenda item. Thanks for that, members. Move on to agenda item number 9. Discretionary Budget Performance Monitoring 2021-22 report by Community Planning and Engagement Manager. Our next report covers the performance monitoring from organisations in receipt of discretionary grants from this committee in 2021-22. It is important that members receive monitoring information to know the impact of these funds, and it's helpful also to see included the images that help bring the accounts of these projects alive. There are good examples of how this committee works with local groups and organisations to bring benefit to large numbers of people in this area. And that's, I think every member will have seen or witnessed the benefit that these events have been to the wider community. Derek Hextall's in teams to answer any members' questions or address members' comments. Derek, have you anything to add to your report?
Briefly, Chair, I mentioned in the report at 3.7 that I would give a verbal update on the balances remaining due to the fact that the fund did remain open up until this committee makes a decision on its future. So if I can draw members' attention to the table in 3.7 of the report, Chair, on page 92, if we look at the small grants fund, the total number of applications supported goes from 9 to 12. And therefore the total remaining between the two funds is now £31,563.22. So the COVID Renew and Restart goes from 14 projects to 18 projects. In 3.13, Chair, the remaining total therefore reduces from £43,353.22 to £33,653.22, Chair.
Thanks, Derek. And members will see the recommendations before them. So before we go to the recommendation, members, any questions for Derek? And this is in the performance monitoring and the fund, because of the discretionary budget's the next one we will deal with. So Andy Ferguson, please.
Good morning, Derek. Nice to see you. It's actually a kind of logistical thing. I'm totally comfortable with all this. Can we maybe ask, because I've had a couple of organisations saying to me that it looks as though the form where you apply also has the confirmation of acceptance of offer and then the reporting mechanism all in the one PDF. And I'm actually wondering if that should actually be split into three. I know there's a rationale for having it all together, but for smaller organisations who don't have it would make it so much easier for them if a fresh email was to come in asking them to respond with a different form rather than all one big long form. Does that make sense?
Derek?
Yeah, through you, Chair, absolutely. Councillor Ferguson, I completely take on board that point, and it's something we can certainly look at so that the three separate parts of the offers are produced in three separate forms.
Members are content with that we'll have that implemented by Derek. If there's someone objects to that, please let me know. In that case, Derek, if you can implement the suggestion by Councillor Ferguson. Any other issues to raise with Derek before we go to the recommendations? Okay, we'll move to the recommendations. We are asked to note the performance monitoring information from projects and initiatives that receive support from this area committee discretionary budget in 21-22 as detailed in the appendix. Note that over 6,500 citizens have benefited from the delivery of 63 local projects and initiatives, and over £202,420 have been invested in projects and initiatives in the local Nithsdale area. And that we agree to close the small grants fund and carry forward the remaining balances from the 2021-2022 discretionary budget to the 2022-23 budget as outlined in paragraph 3.7 and 3.13. Are members happy to agree these recommendations? Thank you, members. That's agreed. Okay, we move on to agenda item number 10. Our next report follows the Council's budget setting and asks members to note the allocation of discretionary budget to this committee. In addition, we are asked to agree to allocate funding for our key projects and initiatives and to agree to invite expressions of interest to deliver these. Derek Hetzel again and teams to answer any members' questions or address any members' comments. And you can see the recommendations, members, in the paper. So, you can see the eligibility framework, and you can see the discretionary budget proposals. So I'll go through them one by one, and if there are no objections, I will take it that they're agreed. So, the total discretionary budget, £167,186.22. It is proposed to carry forward the priority areas and allocations based on decisions from the 2021-22 or to pre-COVID levels where appropriate. And this will be taken into account, of course, that these events actually take place. So the first is the Christmas festivities. We are asked to support community councils to deliver festive events in Kirkconnell, Sanquhar and Thornhill, and the allocation for 2022-23 is £2,580. And I'll continue on in this vein unless someone raises a hand or asks to speak to challenge what's being proposed.
Can we agree on block, Chair?
Yeah. If you want, yes. Now everybody's got the paper in front of them. It's page 117, appendix 2, down to where with the proposed discretionary budget allocated is £107,070. That supports Christmas festivities, Dumfries Christmas festivities, Christmas lights, Nithsdale in bloom, sports, remembrance armed forces, Dumfries Girthorn twinning, and signature events riding the marches.
Agreed.
And then, if we're, and it seems everybody's agreed with that, and I'm delighted. Thanks very much for that, members. It makes life easy. The next is discretionary budget available for future decisions. Key local facilities. And I had a question about this that I'll ask Derek, but we are asked to provide support for local facilities that promote arts, culture and heritage linked to the cultural strategy, which will be agreed in spring and summer 2022. So I would imagine that we will be committing £20,560, provided the cultural strategy is indeed delivered. But the question I have is, it says key local facilities, and that to me suggests that we are supporting properties or assets rather than events. Facilities seem to me things like Camera Obscura, Burns House, Sanquhar Museum, instead of art and culture events. But I'll ask Derek just to clarify what he means by facilities or where that came from, and then Councillor Campbell wants to speak.
Sure, Chair. Yeah, this was the priority wording that was agreed by Nithsdale Area Committee previously, and my understanding of that is that it is, as you suggest, Chair, for the actual facility itself, not for the events or activities that take place within the facility. But again, it's in there as a future decision because we don't have the cultural strategy completed yet, and therefore it could be rediscussed at a future seminar. And thereafter, because we're not being asked to make a decision on that today. If I could also just add, Chair, that based on the previous decision of the previous item, the amounts have actually changed as well now. The remaining budget after the support would reduce to 29,856, and the total available for future decisions would reduce to 50,416. So there's just a 9,700 reduction based on the previous item, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I've got John Campbell and then Andy Ferguson, please. John?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just to bring that point. Derek had his hand up just as you were going through the process, just to say that I've nothing else on the other point, Jim, but I'll leave that for other members.
Thanks very much, John. Andy Ferguson, please.
Good morning, Chair. Thanks, Chair. Just to say that the cultural strategy will be at the March Communities Committee. So Derek's absolutely right. There'll be after that, I would suggest a seminar before we then form an opinion about how we take this forward from there. So just to back up what Derek's saying.
Thanks very much, Andy. Okay. The only other thing I had, and I'm hoping members might be inclined to support this, given the issue we had around the infrastructure for the Christmas festive snow signs, what do you call them, Derek? The things on lampposts? Motifs. Should we not put aside a contingency fund? Because the last thing we want is to find that after setting up a mechanism to provide Christmas features, motifs, that we have breakdowns or storm damage and don't have the resources to fund that. And I wonder if it would be appropriate to set aside, and I know there's been some work, and we might have to ask Derek to go and speak to Mike Fox or some of his team. I know there's been work around timers, etc. Some of them are now at end of life. And I would hate to think that next year we'd have a couple of timers expire and have nothing in reserve to address that. It would simplify the ongoing routine maintenance of what is a well-received piece of work that we do every year, and it addresses Dumfries, Sankirk on Thornhill, and I think it might be helpful if we had a bit of contingency just to ensure that we could address issues or equipment failure or end of life if that were to happen. And again, we might have to ask Derek to carry out some more conversations with Mike Fox and the Roads and Infrastructure team to see whether or not that would be an appropriate use of funds, and if indeed we would need such a contingency in the future. Derek, what's your view on that before I ask members what their view is?
Yes, Chair, members will be aware that there was a one-off contingency, as you referred to, Chair, last year of £9,000, which was able to address the issues to ensure the 2021 lights were all illuminated. Having spoken to Mike's team prior to committee today, Chair, he confirms that within the 48,560, if that were to be agreed, there is an element where they have got a maintenance budget built into that would allow them to do minor upgrades to any issues that they may come across. But the types of timers and connections that are in place are a bit dated, and they are susceptible to the elements. So I'm quite sure that a contingency fund would be welcomed. Whether we need to agree that now, Chair, or I can certainly go and seek further information from the department around what might be required in the future, and that could be, if members agree to carry forward the remaining funds, that could be subject to a discussion at seminar and then a decision in the new council.
Probably a good way forward, Derek. Members, any views on the fact that we might want to consider a contingency based upon accurate and appropriate information from Road and Streets Infrastructure colleagues, and that be presented at the same seminar maybe as the one for supporting local facilities, and that would leave us plenty of time to carry out the kind of work that might be necessary over the summer period and autumn prior to the Christmas lights being reinstalled again leading up to Christmas. I think that may be helpful, and if there's no objection, I'll ask Derek to carry out that investigation and report back at a seminar at some time in the future. So that leaves us then with, we have decided to carry on the new contingency, the new budget available, Derek, is £50,000.
£50,416.22, Chair. Which, just to be completely clear, Chair, that does include the key facilities money as well.
Yes, absolutely, aye. So we'd be looking to take 20,000 off that right away. That would leave us 30,000 to do with as the new council sees fit. I presume it would be a new council, unless there's some urgency, in which case we have a special meeting convened for some time between now and May. If there's some real urgency, we'd probably accept a report at that time. But other than that, it would be for future a future council to decide on. So if members happy with that, we have committed £107,000.70 and we have a remaining budget of £50,416.22 that will be first of all discussed at a seminar, and then the use of the funds will be determined at a future meeting. If members are content with that, we note the council budget for area committee discretionary budget in 2022-23. We note the total Nithsdale area committee discretionary budget. We've agreed to allocate funding for the key priorities initiatives in Appendix 2 and agreed to invite expressions of interest to deliver them. And we've agreed to a future seminar on the use of the remaining funds, and the seminar to include discussion around key facilities and contingency fund, and that will be a 2.4 recommendation in the paper. Members content with that? In that case, we'll move on. Thank you very much for being with us, Derek. Thanks for your help today. We'll look forward to seeing you again sometime, whether that be professionally or private, will be fine. So move on to agenda item number 11. Disposal of land at Disposal of land at Catherine Field Industrial Estate, Dumfries. Report by Head of Economy and Development. The next report covers the disposal of land at Catherine Field Industrial Estate, and Andrew Maxwell is on Teams to answer any members' questions or address any members' comments. And we're only being consulted. We don't have a decision to make on this. Andrew, good morning. Good to see you. You all right?
Hi, Chair. I'm fine, thanks. Yourself?
Fine, thank you, Andrew. Fine. So, members, you have Andrew's report in front of you. We are asked to note the land that's available for its surplus to council requirements. We are asked to note the community councils and groups listed at paragraph 3.5 that have been consulted, and advise Andrew if there are any further groups or members that wish to consult with regard to potential community use. And I think I'll have one speaker whom I can't see yet. Is it John Campbell? I have a hand up, but I don't know which it is.
I think it's me, Chair, Jeff Lever.
Oh, Jeff, okay, it's Jeff. Thanks, Jeff. Jeff, come in, please.
A general point and suggestion. I mean, the question is going to be asked is why are these patches of land suddenly coming before the committee? So someone must have shown an interest in, or there must be some reason behind it. Could that not be incorporated in the report? Or in all the reports? So.
They can be incorporated in the report. That's, it's the only reason that these areas of land ever really come to committee. It's because someone's expressed an interest to purchase these areas of land. So that can be something that can be incorporated in future reports.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And it might be useful that an expression of interest has been made. That's the introduction as to why the report's been presented to us. Councillor Ferguson, Andy?
Yeah, there's also the digitalisation of the land registers up in Edinburgh. And I know personally we had to go through something very similar with our next door neighbours. So there's a significant move for when people are looking or potentially selling property that they digitalise. And sometimes that, I think, Andrew support me in this, it's happened elsewhere, where it actually flags up where people don't actually own the land that they've been using. So there's a variety of reasons I would suggest sometimes why people are, or why this is coming forward.
Yeah, what you sometimes find is that people have maybe put a fence in the wrong place. Maybe it's been there for 10, 15 years. Or when they've bought a property, the fence has always been there. It's not until they come and check the titles that they find that the correct boundary. And sometimes when they go and check the land register, that's the case, and they do a search, or we do a search and we establish that the council own it. So we have to go through the disposal process regarding consulting with client departments, consulting with the client committees as well, and then area committees. So yeah, that does happen.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay, so we are simply being asked to advise Andrew if there are any other organisations that require to be consulted prior to this being considered by the Economy and Resources Committee.
It's already been to...
To be declared
Sorry,
as
Chair.
surplus, but I thought you have to go back for a sale, Andrew.
No, it doesn't. It goes to the Economy and Resources Committee, the disposal process. It goes to the client department first, then it goes to the Strategic Asset Board, and then the fire requirement. After that, it goes to the Area Committee if there's any other organisations that would be interested in this piece of land.
Okay, my apologies for that. So we're last, and it's only about whether or no we consider any other organisation should be consulted, and then the council process is applied for the disposal of this land. So there are a list of the folk that have been consulted: Heath Hall Community Council, Heath Hall Community Centre Committee, and no community requirement for this area of land has been identified. So if we are satisfied that the needs have been met and that Andrew's team have contacted all the necessary organisations, we'll just note that we're being asked to note the 342 square metres of land at Catherine Industrial Estate is surplus to council requirements. Note the community council and group listed in paragraph 3.5 in this report have been consulted with regard to potential community uses, and advise if there are any further groups members wish to consult with regard to potential community use, and the answer appears to be no. So on that basis, members, if we're content to agree with the recommendations, we'll conclude this part of the agenda and move on to agenda item number 12. Okay, agenda item number 12 is simply a repeat of agenda item number 11. Disposal of land at Gladstone Park, Pen Punt, report by Head of Economy and Development. This report is another disposal of land, this time at Gladstone Park and Pen Punt. Andrew Maxwell is here again to answer any members' questions or comments. The community groups consulted at Pen Punt Community Council and Keir Pen Punt and Tinron Development Trust. No community requirement for this area of land has been identified. So again, members...
Can I just add something here, Chair? This land is regarded as common good, so a notice of intent to dispose of the land under Section 104 of the Community Empowerment Scotland Act 2015 needs to be attached to the area of land for a period of no less than 8 weeks.
Okay, it doesn't say that in your report, Andrew.
I know it doesn't, and I should have added that to the report, Chair. So this is why I'm just bringing this up at the moment, to make members clear of that situation.
I thought, not for today obviously, I thought common good only applied to former royal boroughs. I didn't think it was a common good across the whole of Dumfries and Galloway. That's an interesting development if there is, but fine. So members need to note that it's part of common good, and that's another part of the process that will be employed by the council when the process of disposing of the land is being concluded. Is that right, Andrew?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you. Okay. So we're asked to note that 58 square metres of land at Gladstone Park, Pen Punt is surplus to council requirements. Note that community councils and groups listed at paragraph 3.5 in this report have been consulted with in regard to potential community uses, and this is regarded as common good and will form part of the process for disposal. And we have no further groups that we wish to have the council consult with. If that's correct, and you only need to introduce the common good element if it's relative to the report, Andrew. But if it is, you need to introduce another recommendation. But members are aware that it is considered to be part of the common good. Andrew, speed. Andrew Wood, please.
Thank you, Jim. Would it be possible for elected members to get a conclusion to these land transactions? And the reason I ask is, some time back towards the end of last year, there was a piece of land not far from Olga. It's actually across from the Olga Station House that was reported to Nithsdale area. Now, for some reason, that has disappeared and no action has been concluded.
That would be the land at Brandyburn, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Yep.
And potential purchaser has gone to quite an expense to take it to the stage it had been taken to and has had nothing since. Is there any way of getting that concluded?
Yeah, it needs to be advertised in the open market. I've obtained a plans report and I'm just matching up the area of land with what's to see that it ties in with what we can actually dispose of. So that is in process at the moment.
And that's another thing we'll need to deal with offline, Andrew, because that's no part of this report. I understand what you're asking, but if you could contact Andrew Maxwell offline, please, and I'm sure Andrew will help you. And again, if it's something that members should be interested in, if you could circulate that information to all members of the committee, Andrew, it always helps to have a bit of background information when you're considering land disposal or whatever. So if you can do that, please.
That'd be helpful, Jim. Thank you.
The councillor would. Thanks, Andrew. Okay, so we appear to have concluded agenda item 12, and it will be as the report says, unless there is a requirement to mention common good in the report, Andrew.
Okay.
Okay, Andrew, thanks very much. That you end of your duty today.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Nice to see you. Thanks very much, Andrew.
Okay, great, thank you.
Members, we move on to agenda item 13, licence to occupy Lower Burn Hall, Dumfries, report by Head of Economy and Development. The next report is asking us to consider a licence to occupy for the Lower Burn Hall. This report normally would have been presented in Dumfries Common Good Subcommittee, however it has been brought here as the parent committee due to meeting schedules. We will need to be in agreement to withdraw a delegation from Dumfries Common Good. So the first question is, members, are we content to withdraw a delegation from the Dumfries Common Good to consider a licence to occupy Lower Burn Hall? If there's no objections, I'll take it that that's agreed. And we have agreed to withdraw a delegation from the Dumfries Common Good Subcommittee. And we now have Nick Lane and teams to answer any members' questions or address any members' comments. Nick, do you have anything to add to your report? I think there was some minor amendment to it.
Yes, one or two items to add to the area report that have come in past the deadline for being able to include it in this. The first one being Big Burn Supper have asked for their licence to run until the end of the 2023 festival, which would be the 28th of February 2023. Also, could members please note that Big Burn Supper are actually the trading arm of the Electric Theatre Company, and that's, if members are in agreement, that's who we will be licensing the hall to. And another item that did not come into this was that the long-term future use of the Lower Burn Hall will be subject to a further report in autumn of 2022.
Okay, so if members, we're going to discuss it, but if members agree on 2.2, they recommend to finance and procurement transformation licence to occupy the Big Burn Supper at no rent, running costs for all portioned. Agreed. And the end of that paragraph, you will add until February 2023. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair.
And then you'll add a further, by 2.3, the future of the hall will be considered at Communities Committee in February. And when did you say?
In autumn of 2022.
Okay, so before I open up to members, are we absolutely sure we understand what Nick's suggesting or presenting to us? That contained within the report itself is accurate, but 2.2 will add the words until February 2023 and a third recommendation that the future of the hall will be considered by the Communities Committee in autumn of 2022. Do we have any members looking to speak on this matter? I know we've all been, or at least I presume we've all been contacted by a number of enthusiastic members of the Dumfries and wider community. I certainly have. So there's a real enthusiasm for this organisation to continue use of Lower Burn Hall. I've got leader Elaine Murray and then Roy Nicholson, please. Elaine?
Thanks, yes. I think we've all been lobbied by supporters of the Big Burn Supper. Can I just point out that 3.6 says that it has to be a condition of the licence that they're out by the 30th of September. So that will have to be changed to make it by 28th of February or whatever, rather than the 30th of September. So I appreciate that the Lower Burn Hall may need to be used for a decant when Dumfries Academy is refurbished, and there's a possibility that the gym from Dumfries Academy may be relocated into the Lower Burn Hall, but that certainly is very unlikely to happen before February next year. So there would be no point really in the hall lying empty when it could be productively used by the Big Burn Supper, which, as we know, is very successful and helps to promote the local economy at a time when visitors are not so likely to be coming into the area. So just to check that about 3.6, that needs to be, condition must be changed so it doesn't say that they have to be out by the 30th of September.
Thanks, Leader. Nick wants to come in on that. Nick?
Yeah, but just completely agree with that comment, and we'll alter that accordingly. Also, just to point out the advantages of actually having someone in the hall over that winter period in terms of condition and, having people in there, it'll dissuade possible antisocial behaviour that has been happening in the town centre and, involving the Lower Burn Hall. So probably a good idea that there will be someone in over that period in terms of the condition of the hall. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for that additional information. I've got Councillor Roy Nicholson, Ronnie, and then Andrew Wood, please.
Thank you. The leaders expressed all the points I wanted to make in that about the occupation. I think the Big Burn Supper fits in well with the community and the common good as well. So yes, I have no problem with that.
Thanks, Ronnie. Thanks very much. Councillor Wood. Andrew?
Thank you, Jim. As the co-founder to the Big Burn Supper, I really wish them well, and I'm pleased that people are in agreement with them taking this forward. The only concern I have is with the Electric Light Company. Now, are they a not-for-profit charity, as is the case with Big Burn Supper? And will that meet with our conditions of letting?
Nick, can you come in with that?
The Electric Theatre Company, trading as Big Burn Supper, is a registered charity with voluntary trustees. They're a non-profit business registered at Companies House. So and I think they are commensurate with what we are doing in terms of the major festival strategy.
No, that, Jim, happy with that. I just wanted clarification on that point. That was all.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Okay. If there are no other members, it would seem that there's unanimous agreement to allow the Big Burn Supper or the Electric Theatre Company to occupy the Lower Burn Hall until February 2023. That will be added to 2.2 on our recommendations. In fact, I'll ask Nick or Tracy, as our governance officer, maybe just to read out the new and amended recommendations, including the change on the committee report on 3.6, where it refers to vacating the premises by the 30th of September. So, Tracy, if you want to help us with the new recommendations, please, or if you want to leave it in Nick's capable hands, I'm fine with that, just so that members know exactly what we're agreeing to today.
Thanks, Chair. What we would normally do is put a procedure note in the minute before the recommendations, and I'll outline there the updates that Nick gave and the changes to 3.6, and then we'll leave the recommendations as you outlined at the start, with change in 2.2 to include until 28th of February 2023 and 2.3 about the further report going to Communities Committee in autumn.
Thanks very much, Tracy. So if members are content with that, that's a decision of this committee. And thanks very much, Nick, for being with us and for your helpful information and advice.
Thank you.
We'll catch up with you again. Thank you, Nick. And we move on to agenda item number 14. This is an application from the Nith Valley Leaf Trust for a community asset transfer, Closeburn School Playing Field, Closeburn. The report by Community Planning and Engagement Manager. Our next report is to consider a community asset transfer of the school playing field in Closeburn. Nith Valley Leaf Trust have a good reputation not just locally but nationally. Following their recent housing project, you may remember that piece of land was subject to a community asset transfer some time ago. Fiona Dobney is on Teams to answer any members' questions and address members' comments. We are asked to consider the Nith Valley Leaf Trust asset transfer request as laid out in the Stage 2 asset transfer application. Consider the outcome of officer assessment of the request in relation to the Council's requirement to meet best values detailed in paragraph 3.4 and the officer recommendations at paragraph 3.7. Note the outcome of the social value assessment, the proposed transfer. Agree an option from those listed at paragraph 3.8 to be recommended to the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee, and subject to decision at 2.4, consider the condition that education retain access to the asset free of charge as detailed in paragraph 3.5.2. Some long-winded there, but I think it's essential. So Fiona, do you have anything to add to your report? And if no, we'll go to questions.
Nothing further to add, Chair.
Thanks very much. So I'm up now for members' questions or observations on the Nith Valley Leaf Trust application. As you can see, it's a very comprehensive piece of work. They put a significant amount of work into their application, and the information provided to us is quite exceptional. You see the officer's recommendations, and we are asked to consider what option we choose, which will be the only real decision we'll have to make. Is that Councillor Lever looking to speak?
Chair, you've got Councillor Nicholson and then Councillor Wood and then Councillor Lever.
Okay, right. Oh, right. Okay, I didn't see that in Teams yet. But Councillor Nicholson first, then Councillor Wood, then Councillor Lever.
Chair, I was just going to say that it's a very comprehensive and well laid out plan, and I'm quite happy to go with option 1 and 2.4 and agree to the 2.5. So with them recommendations, I'm quite happy to go with that.
Thanks very much, Ronnie. Councillor Wood, please, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Very much, as you know, having shared the ward with me for many a year, the Leaf Trust has done extremely well and always delivers. That is the one thing I can say without any hesitation, and I'm sure you're in agreement with that, Jim. All I say is this has been a long-term ambition of the Nith Valley Leaf Trust to actually take control of the playing field. There's great potential. As you see within the detail, they really have thought this one through. So, yes, as with Ronnie, I would completely go with all of the options, option 1 and the other points that have been made. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, thanks very much, Andrew. I'm sure we all agree that Nith Valley Leaf's reputation speaks for itself. I've got Councillor Lever.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's a very good report, very comprehensive, and I think was to really enhance this what looks at the moment to be quite a sterile area of playing field. So I think it'll be great for the local community and for the primary school in terms of what's being planned. So I'm happy to agree the option and agree 2.5 that education retain access to the assets free of charge. Thanks.
And I'm certain that's something that the Nith Valley Leaf Trust were absolutely happy to agree to. So it would seem there's a very positive approach to this application request. So we can just maybe, if there are no further speakers, we'll go through the recommendations. Consider the Nith Valley Trust asset transfer request as laid out in the Stage 2 asset transfer application, which is Appendix 1, and the Business Plan Appendix 2. We've considered them. Consider the outcome of the officer assessment of the request in relation to the council's requirement to meet best value as detailed in paragraph 3.4 and the officer recommendation at 3.7, and we will have that before us. Note the outcome of the social value assessment of the proposed transfer as detailed in paragraph 3.42, which is also contained in the papers. Agree an option from those listed at paragraph 3.8 to be recommended to the Finance, Procurement and Transport Committee, a transformation committee, and subject to the decision at 2.4, consider the condition that education retain access to the asset free of charge as detailed in paragraph 3.5.2. So we'll go to 3.8. We have option 1.
Chair, I proposed option 1 and agree with 2.5 earlier, and I think that was seconded. So.
Well, I thought you just said that was your opinion, but if that's a proposal, that's absolutely fine. So we have a proposal by Ryan Nicholson, and I'm happy to second that as well. But yes, that's fine. I'm sure we're going to come to that or get to that anyway. So on that basis, are we agreeing that this land transfers for £1?
Yes, agreed.
Which is 3.3.4.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
And are we going to agree to 3.3.5? They will manage the community land and associated assets for the benefit of the community, provide assist in providing recreational facilities. This is recognising what they propose to do. So, I take it then we have a decision, members. Subject to 2.4, consider the condition that education retain access to the asset free of charge as detailed in paragraph 3.5.2, and I think that would be a given. We would actually want that to happen.
Agreed.
So Fiona, this is your report. Can you just confirm that that meets the requirements of your report the decision members have made today?
Yes, it does, Jim, and I can confirm that Nith Valley Leaf Trust are more than happy for that to be written into their agreement that the school maintain use of it during school time.
Fine. And there was a mention of a clawback condition?
Because this community asset transfer proposal scored so highly, there isn't actually a need for a clawback position. When we score them, they come in different levels, but this one was at the highest level, which means we don't need to include a clawback.
Fine. So that's great. Thanks very much for being with us, Fiona, and helping us through that process. I would want to offer my congratulations. I'm sure Andrew and others will as well for their successful application. And Tracy Ann Usually, can you confirm what the decision of the committee is, please?
Sorry, Chair, I just scrolled on too far there in my papers.
You had it to get for your lunch, Tracy?
So you've considered 2.1 and 2.2, noted 2.3, 2.4 is agreed option 1 to be recommended to Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee, and you've also agreed to attach the condition that education retains the asset free of charge.
Superb, thank you very much, and I hope that the application by the Nith Valley Leaf Trust to the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee is successful. Thanks again, Fiona. Okay, members, we move on to agenda item number 15. Dumfries and Galloway Council, Dumfries Town Centre, 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, traffic regulation order 2022, report by Head of Roads and Infrastructure. Our final report is regarding the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in Dumfries Town Centre. Tony, it's good to see you. Tony Topping and Stephen Herry are with us. So, we are asked to note the outcome of the monitoring and evaluation of temporary 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, agree to proceed to advertising and implementation of the permanent 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, and agree to delegate to the Head of Roads and Infrastructure the authority to review, consider and decide on any objections received and not withdrawn to the advertised 20-mile-an-hour speed limit order on behalf of the Nithsdale Area Committee in accordance with the Local Authority's Traffic Orders Procedures Scotland Regulations 1999 as detailed in paragraph 3.50 to 3.52. So the one thing we're doing is delegating authority to officers to determine any objections that might come forward in the future. Tony, do you have anything to add to your report?
Morning, Chair. Nothing to add at the moment, no.
And Stephen?
Nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony or Tony, and thanks, Stephen. Okay, members. Open to members. If we've had a long discussion on this a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in any case, and it's been ongoing for a considerable time. Oh, Councillor Nicholson, you want to speak, Ronnie?
No, it's just to agree to the recommendations. I know there's been a wee bit of, bad press and regarding the 20 mile an hour. I find it very useful, and I think it's a safe way to go. I was down the sands driving my car. Somebody ran across the road. I was doing 20 mile an hour. I had plenty of time to stop, and these things happen a lot. I've seen accidents in residential areas that have been fatal. So I think anything we do to promote safety and is welcome. So I agree the recommendations.
Thanks, Ryan. Did you say that was your proposal? That's a motion, is it?
Happy to second that, Jim.
Yep.
Fucking beat me.
Okay, and I've got Leader to speak, and then Andy Ferguson did say he was happy to second that. Leader?
Yeah, I'm also happy to agree with what Ronnie's just said, that we accept these recommendations. I'm all in favour of 20 mile an hour zones in built up areas. I feel that, to be honest, that the Scottish Borders Council took a bold and innovative approach to doing it, and I'd like to see us do more of that ourselves. And I certainly think that I know some people don't like 20 mile an hour speed limits, but that's just people who are used to driving fast. I think, in my view, that car drivers can slow down, and it makes it easier for people who want to use bikes, who want possibly to walk, to other forms of active travel, if the speed of the traffic is reduced to 20 miles an hour. And I'm all for it, and I'm very happy to second or third Ronnie's suggestion that we agree this.
Thanks very much, Leader. Councillor Ferguson. Andy?
Thanks very much, and just agreeing with Ronnie and the Leader. If you look at the chart set out, Table 1 and then 3.21, every mile per hour that we reduce the speed limit reduces the effects of an accident on people, be that cyclists, pedestrians, and other cars or whatever. So I think the stats speak for themselves, and I think the last thing I would say is all the naysayers who were talking about the town being gridlocked, that's just not happened. It's the traffic's moving just as it did before, just a wee bit slower. That's all.
Thanks very much, Andy. It might then be more appropriate, unless some members object to the recommendations before us, it might be simpler to make it a unanimous decision of this committee to agree the recommendations as set out in the papers.
Agreed.
Okay, happy with that?
Yeah, happy with that, yeah.
The recommendations, we've all read them, we're all satisfied with them, and the members that have spoken are very much in favour of the implementation of the 20 mile an hour speed limit restrictions. So this will be a unanimous decision of the Nithsdale Area Committee, and I presume Tony and Stephen, that will now be progressed as soon as practicable. Thank you very much, both of you, for being with. Oh, Councillor Ferguson.
Just one request, and I know at the seminar we had yesterday afternoon, there was a question asked about why there was smaller signs inside the bigger signs as you enter into the speed restriction, and I'm wondering if no, I think we have to agree here, but whether the officers can take on board from that seminar that we might look at some areas where we might just put some bigger signs up rather than the ones that are allowed to put the smaller signs, just to make sure people understand that they're in a 20 mile an hour zone. I'm thinking halfway along the White Sands, for example, rather than, that's just an example. Yeah. But,
okay, and that's something we'll be happy to delegate to officers, Andy.
Absolutely. I see John Campbell's want to come in. I think it's probably the same on the same vein, but yeah.
Okay, John Campbell, Councillor Campbell, John.
Yeah, it was the point that I raised at the seminar. Sometimes the smaller signs are, if you're concentration is on the traffic in front of you, you don't see these. And I've seen people going faster than 20 miles an hour. Yeah, I mean, the more signs or the better signage or some kind of form, just to make sure that people do follow the 20-mile zones, that would be great. But like you say, delegate to officers and let them use their judgment. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks very much, John and Andy. Okay, so Stephen, did you want to come in now?
If that's okay, Chair, yeah, just to pick up what we discussed in the seminar yesterday was the kind of mix of the signage and the 20 round, the markings on the roads. So we can kind of look at that signing and lining just to make sure that we're communicating that this is a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. Thanks.
Brilliant, Stephen. Thank you. So clearly, Stephen and Tony are on the same page as Andy and John and the rest of us. So in that case, members, we have agreed agenda item 15 as set out in the paper, and that's a unanimous decision of this committee. Okay, I have no other urgent business, so that concludes this particular meeting. Can I thank you all for your contributions? And as elections are approaching in May, although we now have another special meeting in this area committee, I'd like to thank officers and members for their hard work and input over the duration of this committee. Thank you very much, everyone. That concludes business for today, and we'll see you again at the special meeting when that's convened. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for your input.